What's going on? Twice. Okay, that was confused. Had the intro playing again somewhere off stream. Appreciate all of you for tuning in to another edition on the book. I hear it anyway. There we go. Okay. A little bit later, had a neighbor who wanted to get his landscaping on, so had to delay the show a little bit so you get him out of the way. But appreciate it. Tuning in. We got a good amount to talk about, mainly NBA playoffs as the first round is over. Second round series have begun except for T-Wolves and Warriors, which we'll talk about here on the show. Got to talk about some NFL news that did happen between last week and this week really quickly. But before we even get into all that, Brett, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to, talking hoops. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened? Oh, there we go. What's going on, Gamer Kid? What's up, Jory? Appreciate you tuning in. But yeah, like I said, it's mainly going to be NBA playoffs because a lot's been going on there. Hitting that like. Appreciate that, Gamer Kid. Let's start the NFL. Couple of stories that did happen that I feel like we do need to talk about for a little bit before moving on. First off, the Baltimore Raven era with Justin Tucker has come to an end. Tucker was released, as the Ravens said, football decision. No camp going on, no preseason, nothing, but it's a football decision that they released him. I mean, how surprised were you by this? And was it really a football decision? Like, come on, we're not crazy here. We're like, yeah, how surprised were you that they released him?
I thought the writing was on the wall as soon as they drafted Tyler Loop.
Mm-hmm.
In the sixth round. Like, I thought the writing was on the wall then.
Yeah.
But if you really believe that this was a football decision, come talk to me. I got some oceanfront property in the desert to sell you. It's had nothing to do with the football decision. And I can say that from kind of experience as a Packers fan because, I've watched my team watch our longtime kicker struggle in Mason Crosby back in 2015. Everybody wanted his head, but, we stuck with him. He never caused us any problems. We just trusted that it'd be a down year. If it wasn't for the 16 allegations, do we really think that the Ravens wouldn't have cut him loose? Come on now. This had nothing to do with a football decision.
Mm-hmm.
This is really simple. This is all off the field. This is all. There's 16, like I said, 16 allegations against him that are very serious. And the Ravens know it too.
Yeah.
And they're going to catch a lot of flack. And honestly, rightfully so. They should. They were so quick to talk about when these same allegations hit Deshaun Watson. They're so quick to talk about their zero tolerance policy, and they're acting a little slow when it happened to their own guy. So, at the end of the day, it's not a football decision. This is we need to separate ourselves from this problem as quickly as possible decision.
Yep, absolutely. And, the team is obviously trying to make it seem like it's a football decision because if they just came out and said, oh, the allegations are why we're letting him go, then they open themselves up to questions as to why did they wait this long? What did they find out? And all that. By saying it's a football decision, to selection of the fan base, they'll take that and go, okay, he sucked last year. They drafted a kicker. 1-1, make 2. Tucker's no longer here. But yeah, obviously the allegations played into it. They came out a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, and were saying like they're monitoring the NFL investigation. I think the NFL's been feeding the Ravens what they've been finding. So clearly it looks like the Ravens heard enough to not want to take on the headache of Justin Tucker anymore. And if they want to call that a football decision, cool. fine by me. But follow-up question would be, is this it for Justin Tucker? Or do you think another team, because of his track record, kicking the ball and everything like that, do you think another team takes a chance on him?
Justin Tucker, you are a Cleveland Brown. The unfortunate answer to that is, regardless of if he's, proven innocent, guilty, if you have talent, teams are willing to overlook a lot of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you can contribute to winning football games, I don't care about any of that. They've shown that multiple times. So, yes. If he is going to contribute winning football games, some team's going to take a chance on him. Some team's going to go, this guy could bounce back. So, at the end of the day, yeah, I think somebody will take a chance on him.
You on Spotify? Well, we are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. You can find it Twitter. Like, we're not on Spotify, I don't believe. So, unfortunately, not. But yeah, something tells you, a few weeks will kind of blow by. Maybe like during the preseason, we'll see some news about Tucker signing somewhere, especially if, I don't know if there's really a good way for these allegations to go away, but if what comes out from it is less than what teams maybe think outside of Baltimore, maybe I'm kind of on the side where I think this is probably it for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe retires in like a month or so. Because he's 35, 36, I believe. He is coming off of a down year. And with the allegations, if you then bring him into another building, now you're exposing him to another fan base that may not be happy seeing him on the team. And I don't know if any of these teams necessarily want that at this point in Tucker's career. So I think he's probably done. Although I have seen a lot of people online talking about watch the Browns sign him, which, hey, if they do, they do. But yeah, I think this might be it for Tucker. But also making news, NFL wise. I know this is a guy that I was like, I didn't want to talk about him anymore. But Shedeur Sanders is in the news once again. World Class Organization. Because he decided, he fell in the draft, and now we have a fan who's going by John Doe suing the league for like $100 million for emotional distress and basically saying like the league forced Shedeur to drop. I don't understand the basis behind this, but what were your thoughts on that? Like, do you think this is something maybe some random fan trying to get some attention? Do you think that this is something that should be legit? Because look, if we're going to start filing grievances against our teams, then yeah, I can file grievances against the Red Sox if they miss the playoffs because it'd be like 162 games I wasted watching you. You didn't make it. Like, what do you make of this? Is it something to worry about if you're the league, or like you just brush this aside and be like, okay, we have better things to do with our time?
The league isn't even going to look twice at this one.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like this is just a fan that wanted some attention, and it's a good way to get it. Like I'll give him credit. So, this is a great way to get your 5 minutes of fame. And listen, I hope he wins, because if he does, then I'm going to be set for life when my Glenn Rivers lawsuit hits the Milwaukee Bucks. So, like, yeah, it's just, but this is just clearly something a fan did for attention. But it is funny, so I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I kind of want to know the John Doe in this case. Like, I want somebody to find him, interview him. Like, I want to know what makes this fan tick and why they're really emotionally distressed over Shedeur dropping. But yeah, so I think it's something the league's just going to be like, here we go. Like, throw it in the junk pile. Like, we don't care about this.
Telling you right now, I say, if you want to know the address, go to Boulder, Colorado. I'm sure you'll find where it's coming from.
Right, it has to be some Colorado fan. I mean, well, look, Colorado was a pop culture phenomenon with the celebrities, and they were the cool college program to follow. So, it was probably one of those fans who jumped on the bandwagon and really thought Shador was going to be higher pick. But look, that's it on Shador until he starts making news on the field. Just want to get that out of the way. But yeah, let's get into what we, mainly we're going to talk about on here, the NBA. So looking at these playoff series, let's start with the series that hasn't started yet in the second round, Wolves and the Warriors. The Wolves are coming off of the 5-game series win over the Lakers. The Warriors are coming in off of their 7-game series win over the Rockets. Even though they had the 3-1 lead in that series, it was forced to the 7th game, and they were able to win it game 7 to move on. All that's well and good. When you look at these two teams paired up, we have a 6 seed going against a 7 seed in the second round. What do you think is the biggest X factor in this series that will determine who wins it?
If you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, the X factor, it really feels like it's just Julius Randle, right? Like that felt like the difference between winning and losing in the last game or last series. When he starts shooting 50% from 3, that's just almost impossible to stop. But on the flip side, if you're the Warriors, I think it's literally just who's stepping up outside of, Dre, Jimmy, and Steph. Like game 7, you got Buddy. Like you're just gonna need, people to contribute outside of Dre, Steph, and Jimmy, and I think that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Okay. What's going on here? What do you guys think about the European player? I mean, this is not I'm assuming that's a soccer player. Wrong show, but appreciate you dropping the comment. Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like when you look at Minnesota and Golden State, Ant, Curry, obviously your best players. Which supporting cast can outperform the other one will obviously help in this. Can McDaniels kind of keep up his maybe surprising shooting that he had against the Lakers? Can Randall continue with his aggressiveness that we kind of hadn't seen since his contract year? Can Rudy Gobert continue to be a presence on the inside? Now, obviously, in Game 5, Lakers had issues with their big, so it made it easier on him. But the Warriors aren't necessarily a big team either. So he's going to kind of have to have the same mentality going up against Golden State. And people keep talking about playoff Jimmy. Well, you're going to need playoff Jimmy even more in this series as they keep getting deeper into the playoffs. So, yeah, I definitely agree with both of those on both fronts. But now, as you put the X factors out there, who do you have winning it? How many games? And I guess who would be kind of the MVP of the series for your team that you have winning it?
Say, give me Wolves in 7.
Okay.
And I think if they're going to win, the MVP just has to be Anthony Edwards. Like with the way this team is constructed, it's gonna be Ant if they're going to pull it off. He's gonna have to step it up, and he's definitely gonna have to play much better than he did, at time in the last series. Like people ready to crown him face of the league after that closeout game when in all reality, like he didn't play his greatest game during that elimination game. So I'm just thinking that if the Wolves want to pull this off, which I think they will, they're going to need Ant to step it up to the next level, which I think he's more than capable of.
Okay. I think going into the playoffs, I did like one of those NBA brackets where you pick the team and games. I think at this point I had Warriors in 7. So I'm going to stick to that. And obviously if they win in 7, I think Curry would be the obvious answer, but I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota kind of does what Houston did, because Houston put so much attention on the Curry, that allowed other guys to kind of step up later on. So let's say Minnesota does that, kind of neutralizes Curry a little bit. I almost think you got to kind of look at Draymond Green, because Green's going to have to be a guy who's going to have to keep his emotions in check. He can't, get ejected or too many texts and all that kind of stuff. Like, he can play the mental game, but he can't go too far with it and kind of lose control, because we know how important he is to the Warriors. Offensively, he takes a lot off of Curry's plate. He can facilitate at the top, screens, the dribble handoffs, all that. He's very important. And then defensively, obviously, along with Butler, versatility. So Draymond Green has to keep his emotions in check. Hey, what's going on, Trage? Is everyone on the radio show now here? There we go. I appreciate you tuning in.
What's up,
so yeah, I've got Warriors in 7, and yeah, I guess we'll see which one of us is right.
I'd say I'm excited for the series too. It's going to be a lot of fun too to see. These are two teams that just straight up don't like each other. Like when we're talking the Timberwolves, obviously Jimmy had a falling out with the Timberwolves. And then of course there's the Dre and Rudy, saga. Like there's a lot of fireworks that could very well be explosive. I would not be shocked if we had at least three techs.
Yeah. He can't help himself a lot of the times with some of the stuff that he does. I mean, the Van Vliet play was kind of crazy. And, he's going up, flailing around, like throat chopped him. It was crazy. But, yeah, I don't know. It's Draymond is just going to be Draymond. It's just how far. It's like, where do the refs place the line with him, and whether or not he just oversteps it recklessly. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting series. I'm excited to see what happens with that one in game 1 tonight. But now, get into the series that have started. They're underway. We'll stay out west. The Thunder and the Nuggets played last night. Aaron Gordon hit the big three, 2.8 seconds left to give the Nuggets the game 1 steal over the Thunder. So when you look at the game last night, what is sustainable for the Nuggets with them getting game 1 that they can carry into the rest of the series if they do want to upset the Thunder in this round?
I say that's so tough when it comes to this, right? I think they just gotta, keep being physical, making sure that they're being aggressive, and just at the end of the day, just continue to create high quality looks. It's going to be a tough series. It's going to be a tough 7-game series, but at the end of the day, they just got to stay physical and stay aggressive.
Aaron Gordon's have to be the definite number 2. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely having a really good, really good playoff run, and him hitting that shot, and after the game he's talking about he knew it was going in and everything like that. Yeah, if he's going to be the number 2 guy, you feel really good about that. That means Murray is your 3, MPJ is 4. Like, okay, like the Nuggets look a little bit better in that case. Doc's even fired up. There you go. Yeah, go ahead.
I will say that if the Nuggets do want to actually pull off this upset, they're going to need a more consistent performance from MPJ. They're going to need him to give him something, because even though they won, I promise you it was not because of PJ. He was just not good for them yesterday.
Yeah. And that's been kind of a consistent thing with him. Just frustrating to watch him. Because when he takes his jumper, it's such a smooth jumper that you figure he would be consistent with it, but sometimes his shot selection that works against him, and he just kind of just disappears a lot of the time. So Yeah, don't trust MPJ. Yeah, don't blame you. Like it's hard to trust him, even with the skills that he does have. Okay, so yeah, he's either making shots or gives you nothing. Absolutely,
And
that's the frustrating part with him so much.
and offensively, Jamal Murray just can't disappear for long stretches.
Yes.
Like he started off the game with a really hot, 12 points in the first quarter, but then once again, just for long stretches, I almost forgot that he was on the team. I'll give him credit. He was, working his tail off defensively.
Mm-hmm.
But this is going to be a series where if they really, truly do want to pull this off, they're going to need his offense.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay. Level of panic for the Thunder after game one.
I wouldn't be panicking all that much. Like, I think a lot of that just, came down to because a lot of the times I didn't think the Thunder defense was even like that bad per se. I thought they played really good defense at times.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is gonna sound really weird to say, right? Like I thought Chet did great on Jokic for a lot of that game. I think that was just a situation where big time players make big time shots. Just a lot of great defense, but better offense. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm the Thunder, I'm obviously getting ready to make adjustments, but I'm also just not too worried. Like how sustainable is Jokic going for 40-20 every game? So like I would definitely make adjustments, but I'm not hitting the panic button yet.
Okay. Yeah. I look. I said that across the board. Game one, never overreact to, obviously, because you got to lose 3 more times before you're eliminated. And if you are as good as the Thunder think they are, they'll make adjustments in game two, and they should be much better off for it.
I'd say, well, unless you're unless you're the Celtics, in which you're done for, you're screwed. That's all I'm seeing all over. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, Kyle. Didn't you know it was a 1-game series?
I already knew, so it's all good on that front. We'll talk about them here in a little bit, but I think I got the name. So Peanut Butter Posse. I respect the name. Jokic needs to have the ball in his hands. He's going to need to get in his bag and shoot long distance. Well, the ball in his hands, that's nothing that's too hard to come by because he does a lot for them offensively. So what do you feel about, I guess, the shooting from long distance? Do they need that from Jokic to pull the upset?
I don't even think they really like. Obviously, that helps because then you can pull the rim protection out of the paint. I think that's a part of it, but I don't even think that's really more on Jokic just per se that they need it more consistently from the other guys. Like Jokic is going to be such a threat that whether his shot is falling or not, that rim protector is coming with him.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, can they take advantage of what's created? Because we know the Thunder are just going to overplay the passing lanes. They're not going to give up easy layups. So I'm not so worried about Jokic hitting a three. It's when you give it to MPJ, can he hit? Can Jamal Murray hit? Is Christian Braun going to be hitting? Is Aaron Gordon hitting?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it's going to come down to can the supporting cast make enough shot?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, we'll obviously see game two if the Thunder make their adjustments and can even the series, or the Nuggets kind of defy the odds a little bit more. I do think them getting out of the first round was a bit of a surprise to some people because the Clippers were such a trendy pick for a lot of analysts and people that now if they can knock off the Thunder, obviously you're gonna be thinking about them as a potential favorite to come out of the West at that point. So we'll see if the Nuggets can kind of take advantage of the momentum that they have right now. Now let's jump to the East. And a game that is going on right now, got game two between the Pacers and the Cavs going. Game one, the Pacers went in there, did their thing, played their game, played at their pace, got the win. What did you see in game one that maybe surprised you with the Pacers play? And was there anything from the Cavs side that has you worried a little bit? Like, what was the biggest issue for Cleveland, I'll say, game one in dealing with the Pacers?
They tried to run at the Pacers' pace, and I think that's a problem, right? The beauty of the Cavs is that they can play at multiple paces. They have the bigs to slow the game down, but they can run. I think if you want to beat the Indiana Pacers, you just cannot try to run with them. That's just a very well-conditioned and cardio team. So I think that in order for the Cavs to pull it off, they're just going to have to slow the game down, make it a half-court affair, because they do have the weapons to attack in the half court, very efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're up 14 right now, and a big part of that is they've, completely slowed the game down. So I think the big key for them, just play at your pace and don't get sucked into a track meet against Indiana.
Yeah, and I know that I think Cleveland, a part of them wants to play fast as well, which is what I think they try to do in game one. But like you said, if you slowed the game down, you trust Cleveland more so offensively than Indiana. I think with Indiana, they can only kind of play fast paced. Whereas I think with Cleveland, what has, like you said, made them so good this year is they'll speed up when they need to, they'll play half court when they need to, and they can kind of beat you either way. So yes, it is encouraging to see that they learned from game one, didn't want to play the track meet, dictate the game on your terms, and you're seeing what's happening. Now, if you're Indiana, if you lose game two, you're like, hey, you got your split in Cleveland. You take that as a win anyway. But let's see. Oh, what's going on? Kneecap, what up? But yeah, I fully expect Cleveland to, come out of this showing that they are the better team. Series will shift to Indiana, which will be another thing that Cleveland will worry about, because we know in Indiana, the Pacers will play much more confident as well. So, we'll see what happens with that series as well, because it does look like the Cavs have it under control right now. All right, let's get into these Celtics, because the panic levels are crazy. Yeah, what's going on, Jeremy?
Halliburton's holding his hand right now. Halliburton's holding his hand right now pretty hard.
Well, see, there you go. That would be something that if it's, I'm assuming it's his right hand, shooting hand. But yeah, that's what goes on with these series, which is why you can't go crazy after game one, because obviously you don't want to root for injury or anything like that. But Halliburton and his importance to the Pacers, if it's something that bothers him, that can have an effect on them going on down the line in the series. But yeah, so hopefully he's okay. Obviously, you probably update whenever they find out what's wrong with him. But yeah, the Knicks Celtics last night. Celtics were up 20. Knicks walked them down. Brunson missed the layup over Al Horford in regulation, went to overtime, and probably the one moment that Bridges had all game, when Bridges hit that three in the corner late in overtime, the Knicks come away with the upset, have the 1-0 series lead. And as you said a little earlier, the panic has set in. So looking at the game, what would be encouraging for Knicks fans out of game one?
They won.
Well, I mean, yes.
I mean, I know. I just had to be a little bit of
I know.
I guess, but no. So here's the thing about like the Knicks win. I think it's encouraging, like the aggressiveness of OG. Jalen Brunson looked good. I think the biggest challenge when it comes to that is just stay aggressive. Continue to just try to keep the Celtics on the perimeter. They did a good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, just keeping aggressive, physical, and just keep, hyping up OG and Brunson. Hey, yeah, we need this. We need this. You got to keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I do like, the work that those two did last night.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, going into the series, I did do a video on my channel, and one of the bigger keys for the Knicks would be Anunoby and Bridges being productive on both ends of the floor. Last night, Anunoby was. Bridges still struggling offensively, but like I said, he hit the big three late. So if you're a Knicks fan, you don't necessarily care that he struggled all night. He showed up when you needed him. So, yeah, they got that. I thought Josh Hart, with his action on the offensive boards late, especially, helped them out as well. But yeah, good win for the Knicks. They got their win in Boston, and we'll see what they do tomorrow night.
It's funny. A lot of people, when it comes to Boston, want to talk about all the missed threes.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny part is, I think there's a point to it. I do get that criticism, but I think the bigger problem is really just really the clutch time threes are what bothered me. Because I thought a lot of threes they missed in the second half were quality looks. They were getting some really good looks that just weren't falling. And this is where I'm going to have a little criticism for Tatum here.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him with a sidestep three over Jalen Brunson. I think he has to do a better job at attacking mismatches because I think that kind of killed them late in the game, especially right before Brunson missed that floater. Tatum gets a mismatch on Brunson, and what's his call? Sidestep three. I want to see Tatum, who's been one of the better slashers in the NBA, attack the basket, get downhill. If they're going to switch on you, make them pay. I don't need you to shoot 17 threes. So I actually thought the quality of the threes that the Celtics were getting last night were actually really good. That's just an off night. However, I just want to see, in clutch time, I go, okay, guys, these aren't falling. We just got to get downhill some more. So if I'm the Celtics, there's adjustments. I don't think it's necessarily on the threes, though. I think there was some more defensive miscommunications than anything that they're going to be looking at. But yeah, I would definitely just love to see them, punish some of these switches more next game.
Right, and that's basically what they did during the season series where they swept the Knicks. Was they hunted Brunson and Cat on defense, which they did a little bit of that with Cat because he was in foul trouble early on. And as Reggie Miller told us, Cat led the league in fouls, which it's hard. It's not hard to see why, because on the perimeter, he kind of gets flat-footed and he reaches a lot. But obviously, if you're a Knicks fan, you want to see him that over the course of this series. But yeah, I agree with you. A lot of people obviously jumped on the three-pointers right off the bat. And yes, they shot 15 to 60. But a lot of those were threes that they normally make. I mean, Al Horford missed a few in the corner when he was wide open. Those are threes he normally knocks down. Derek White missed some. Jaylen Brown went 1 for 10 from three. He's not the greatest three-point shooter, but he doesn't shoot that bad. So with all that, they did lose by 3 in overtime. So as bad as they shot from the field, they still hung there with the Knicks team, and they did find themselves up 20, even shooting as bad as they did. So I think Mazzulla, who we all know is a bit of a nut job, is looking at the tape. He's probably going to tell him similar things to what you said, in that, late in the game, you got Cat on you. He's got 4 or 5 fouls. Go at the rim on him and force him to make a decision. He'll either go up and try to get a block, potentially open himself to another foul, or he'll just let you go. So I think we'll see a much better version of Tatum, especially, even though Tatum did still have 16 rebounds to go to his 23 points. So if you just looked at his line without looking at the percentages shooting wise, he was very productive. It's just that late in the game, when they had the opportunities to reclaim the win after getting up the big lead, didn't necessarily go his way. But once again, game one, I'm not gonna freak out. I leave that to Stephen A. Because I saw a little clip. Stephen A. was loving on his Knicks, which he's been real Jekyll and Hyde with them. Because when they got Cat and all of them, he thought they were the greatest team in the East. Season played out, they weren't that good. He was doom and gloom with them, and now he's like all Knicks. But that's Stephen A. for you. It is what it is. All right, so looking at the top seeds, because right now, so far, the underdogs have kind of been doing their thing. Thunder, Celtics, Cavs. Who's in the most trouble of the three?
Most trouble, I think it's the Cavs.
Okay.
Just because, and it's not really because of anything they can control on the court, but it's just the simple fact that obviously Garland, Hunter, and Mobley are all out today.
Mm-hmm.
They're still winning, but if I had to pick, I think with all the injuries, it's just hard not to put the Cavs at one.
Okay, that's fair. Hold on, Anthony didn't say what's going on, Anthony. So KP's dealing with an illness, which it's the same illness he had a couple of months ago when he missed some games. I think he lost weight and all this kind of stuff. So it's been like a lingering issue with him. That's what happened in game one. He played the first half, didn't come out for the second half. The illness has popped up again. Don't know what the illness is. It's some crazy thing that he's dealing with. Anthony also said Jared Allen needs to step up. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, all Jared Allen needs to do is be a rim presence and get your rebounds. You don't necessarily need him to score, although he will score a little bit around the bucket. But that's all you need Jared Allen to do. And as Anthony says, needs to step up. This is going to be probably not necessarily a tough series for him because he is athletic enough to stay with Turner and guys like that. But when you're dealing with Indiana and the bigs that they have, there's the same thing I said about your Bucks when they went up against Indiana. You got to make sure you stay attached to Turner, Toppin, or even Siakam when they do go small, because all three of those guys can kind of shoot from the outside. Siakam, I feel like a little less of a threat, but yeah, because a lot of these bigs are so used to drop coverage that against Indiana, that's not a team you want to necessarily do that too much against. Okay, here we go. I think the Knicks C's winner goes to the finals. Then added, no way the NBA lets the Cavs or Pacers win in a year the ratings are terrible. So we'll take the second part out of it, but do you think the Knicks C's winner makes it to the NBA finals?
If the Cavs are still beat up, I mean, I could see it. I think the winner of the Knicks and C's beat the Pacers if the Pacers make it out of that series. But I just think that if the Cavs are healthy, the Knicks or Celtics are just going to have an absolute handful with them. But if they're still banged up going against the Celtics, then yeah, I'm just picking the Celtics regardless.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I agree. Like, the Cavs obviously would be a tougher matchup for either the Knicks or the Celtics as opposed to the Pacers. Although, if the Pacers do get by the Cavs, I mean, they would be a confident bunch. They would be, I guess, playing really well basketball if they've gotten through the Cavs. So I think the C's would beat them. I think the Knicks would be interesting against the Pacers. Because I think, once again, with Cat's limited ability on the perimeter, does he just get lost against Turner and Toppin once again? So I don't know. Then the Cavs probably would beat the Knicks. So it'll depend on matchups, Peanut Butter Posse. If the Cavs make it out, be a little tougher for both. Pacers make it easier for the C's. Knicks probably still get by them. I appreciate the questions in the chat. Definitely you can keep them going. So yeah, this one now, I got a question for you, Brett, because I believe with your Bucks, Giannis is going to become a focal point in the offseason. And I believe I heard, all intents and purposes, Giannis is telling people he wants to stay in Milwaukee. So you are running the team, and you now know that Giannis wants to stay. Would you still try to deal him as a way to try to kind of rebuild, or would you try to build the team differently around him with the assets that you do have, as limited as they may be? What would you do now, knowing that Giannis is telling people he wants to stay? You believe him?
Yeah, and that's an easy answer. If Giannis wants to stay, then you keep him.
Okay.
Like, I don't think there's a universe in which you deal Giannis if you're the Bucks. Like, I think you just try to make do with whatever assets you have. And then, of course, the other big reason you don't trade him, obviously, outside of, just he's one of the best basketball players in the world, is really simple. Do you know how much money he generates for Milwaukee? Like, there's on the court reasons, and then there's the off the court financial reasons as well, in which if he doesn't request a trade, he's going to stay a Milwaukee Buck until he says so.
Anthony said put him on the Spurs. That'd be scary for the league, but I see. If Giannis wants to stay, he stays. He resurrected that franchise. Jeez, can't talk tonight. Him or Kareem? Oh, here we go. Is he or Kareem your Bucks GOAT?
Giannis. I ain't got to think twice about that one. What Kareem did for us was great, but at this point in time, like Giannis, he's our pretty much leader in every statistical category. He also led us to a title with multiple MVPs, and now at this point, he's been with the team longer. I think if we're talking about an all-time ranking, obviously Kareem is much higher than Giannis all time. But if we're talking about who means more to the Milwaukee Bucks and who's bigger in Bucks history, at this point, I think the answer is pretty easily Giannis 1, Kareem 2.
He's saying because nobody's going to sign his brother. I guess the second part of that. Because once again, since Giannis kind of made some news with he wants to stay, do a little quick exercise with you. Let him go or re-sign in terms of the Bucks free agents. I kind of want to see what your thoughts are, especially with the current team, and who has done enough to stay for this next wave of the Bucks franchise. Okay. So let's start with Brook Lopez is a free agent. Would you try to sign him back?
See, I would depends on the price point, right? Because I just don't think we can afford him again at $24 million a year, like what he was making last year. But if the price is right, I would absolutely look into it. At the end of the day, he's a situational player. He can only play against certain teams in certain matchups. But he still does really well against those certain teams and certain matchups. So I think that if he's willing to stay and he's willing to do it at the right price point, then yeah, I would bring Brook back.
Okay. Bobby Portis has a player option. Would you be okay with Bobby Portis picking up the player option? And it's $13.5 million.
I think he's going to anyway. I'm already prepared for it. So I don't mind it. I don't, hate on Bobby as much as other people. He has his flaws, but he's been such an integral part to that bench unit. And the reality is, I don't think that we're going to really find anybody better with the assets we have. So I would honestly keep Bobby.
Here's a question for you. If the Sixers won out of Embiid, would you go after him to pair with Giannis and Dame?
I mean, I'd definitely call, but we'd have zero chance to get him, but I'd call.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see how he would end up there. But
we just don't have the assets for it, and we know teams like the Suns would probably overpay.
Mm-hmm.
They trade for him and give him a max.
Yeah, That'd be the order of business out in Phoenix.
Say James Jones got his promotion, so he's got even more power now.
That is wild to me. Pat Connaughton, 32-year-old, has a player option for like $9.5 million.
Love Pat, but I wouldn't bring him back at that price point. Pat's another guy I think is an interesting one where he's another guy I would take back, but at the right price point. But the right price point to me is like the vet minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think he's worth much more than that, but he does have some great chemistry with Giannis that can't be understated. So I do think Pat is worth looking at if he's willing to take like a vet minimum, but anything more than that, let him walk.
Okay. Okay, here's the interesting one. Kevin Porter Jr., 25. He has a player option as well, $2.5 million. There any chance he takes that player option, or do you assume, like I do, he's gonna look for a long-term deal somewhere?
He's gonna look for a long-term deal somewhere, and I'm not paying that next contract.
Okay.
It's one of those things that he's a guy again that it depends what he's looking for because when it comes to bring him back or not, I think that's the most important part, right? Like, what am I bringing him back at? Like, what's the price point? And I think Kevin Porter Jr. did have some good flashes for us, but I still think he's just the very much inconsistent player that we've seen for years. And I'm not willing to shell out big money to bring him back. So honestly, if he wants anything like if he's looking for anywhere close to like 15 mil or 20 or somewhere in that range, I'm letting him walk.
Okay. That's fair. Other free agents. Yeah, Jericho Sims, Torian Prince, Gary Trent Jr.
The only one that I'm prioritizing keeping out of those three, Gary Trent Jr.
Okay.
Like Torian Prince he's a really fake 3-point shooter. And what I mean by that is he's that guy you go, oh, he's shooting 45%. He's so elite at shooting threes. But then you actually watch him play and you're like, oh, no wonder why he's shooting 45% because he only wants to shoot when there's nobody within 6 feet of him. And if he takes one dribble, like that throws off his whole rhythm and he just cannot shoot after that. So he has a very slow release. So we've just seen it time and time again with him, like in high pressure games. It's just not his thing. So, and Jericho Sims, I think he's an interesting guy. I'd want to bring him back, but I also don't know if like Doc's willing to use him. So I'm sorry if Glenn's willing to use him. So, like the one guy I'm willing to bring back for sure, the one guy for sure, Gary Trent. If we have a plan for him, Jericho Sims.
Okay. Then I guess the two guys who, if you're going to move them, would be trade only. Kuzma. Now he has 2 years left on his deal, like $42 million. You think there's a shot at all they could dump him off somewhere, or would you want to see him, I guess, have a good start to the season and maybe trade deadline you can move him?
I'd rather just dump him now.
Okay.
And the reason because if he has a good start to the season, like I know Mr. Rivers will be like, oh well, he's turned the corner, so we can't trade him now, and then we just be stuck with him the entire year. So I would rather just dump him off while we still have a chance. And honestly, I'll take anything for him. Like I'm allergic to ice cream, but I'll take like a Ben and Jerry's, 4-minute trade at this point. Like I don't even care. Like name your offer. You can have Kyle Kuzma for 2 years. I really don't care.
Okay. Now Dame is an interesting one because obviously Dame has next year guaranteed, and then he has a player option the following year. And he's obviously going to be coming back from the injury, which I don't know what the timetable is on that with him. But at this point, what's the best case scenario for the Bucks in terms of Dame Lillard right now?
He comes back and he's like 80% the player he once was. Like, I can't expect him to come back and be like Dame Lillard of old. But if he can come back and be like like even 80% of what we got in Milwaukee, like that's probably the best case scenario. Like we're talking about a 35-year-old coming off an Achilles tear. Like I'm not expecting all that much from him.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm fully expecting him to come back, maybe late next year, playoff time. But I'm for sure expecting him to pick up that player option. At this point, I don't see a chance that he declines that.
Okay. I think that's fair. I know, Trajan mentioned earlier that did his show, then back on here because he talked about this as well. And I went through looking at free agent lists, and I brought up I came up with 3 guys. I want to get your thoughts on your interest level for your Bucks going out to get them. First name, Mo Wagner.
I'm a big fan of Mo Wagner. I think he brings a toughness and physicality. He's, aggressive at, chasing rebounds. And when you have guys like Brooke Lopez and Bobby Portis, who, Bobby's fine at grabbing rebounds, but Brooke's pretty terrible at it. So I would definitely enjoy some Mo Wagner. It'd be an interesting fit.
Okay. And then I had 2 other names. I feel like it's probably going to be one or the other. And I was thinking of with Dame missing some time next year, I was looking at the backcourt. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Giddey.
I mean, both of those guys would be. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be a dream, but I also just think we can't afford him. I think he's going to be out of our price range. And same with Josh Giddey, but I just don't think the fit with Josh Giddey would be fantastic.
Okay.
And it's not because of, Josh Giddey per se, but it's kind of more so how much would he really have the ball in his hands, right? Like it would start out fine. I think him and Giannis could probably coexist as a duo, but then when Dame comes back, he's going to still want to have the ball in his hands quite a bit. And when Josh Giddey's getting reduced touches almost into like a third option, kind of like what happened in Oklahoma City, his production just kind of drops. So I think he's kind of more of a better fit in a place like Chicago where he can, dominate the ball and make all the, choices. I think that's where he's at his best. So I think it'd be interesting. And if we could afford him, I wouldn't, hate us going after him. But I think he's out of our price range, and I think there are just better fits for Josh Giddey out there.
Yeah, those are just 3 names I was kind of looking around free agents and, like I said, wanted to get your thoughts on. So I do think the Mo Wagner one would be a really good pickup for them. But Anthony did have a question, so we can kind of keep this team building theme going. How would we fix the Suns? I guess either trade Booker and rebuild, or trade Beal and KD and build around Booker.
Well, they tried trading Beal already, and that didn't work for him. So, trade it. The right answer is just trade everybody and rebuild. Like the Phoenix Suns are just kind of cooked.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when we're talking about the Suns, it's not like Milwaukee, for example. They're probably cooked too, but at least I can go, well, we have Giannis. We have a chance. If we, get the right team around him. When you look at the Suns, you don't really have that, right? You don't look at, you look at Kevin Durant, you go, okay, he's 36. He's really good. We have a chance. But, you can't, I'm not really overly excited to rely on, KD all year. Mm-hmm. I respect KD. I love his game. I still think he played at a level of a top 10 player in the league, but I think if you're trying to overwork KD by the end, he's just going to be a little extra gassed when you get there. Devin Booker he's another fantastic talent, but I think the nightmare comes after that. I think you have your talents, but once you get past that, like, what do you really have and what assets do you have to build around with? Like, they don't really have anything to build around KD and Booker. They don't. The only talent that I really like around them that I'm like, oh, dude, this guy, keep him, is Ryan Dunn. I think he's a fantastic talent for what they want to do. But at the end of the day, they're a team that they just don't have enough talent, and they don't have enough assets to restock the talent around their two stars. Like, and the problem we saw last year, like trying to allude to earlier, the way they're set up right now, you're just going to wear down KD and Booker as the season goes on, and at the end, they're just going to be so gassed that they don't even make the playoffs. So, I think, in all reality, the right answer, like, it's just over. It's time to blow it up. Like, that's my honest answer to that. Because I don't really see a path for them going forward, especially with Beal having a no trade clause. That kind of just nukes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think look, I think best case, the Suns would love to build around Booker, but like you said, the Beal no trade makes things tougher because there's a good chance that the Suns are just stuck with Beal, and KD and Booker are the two that get moved. Which I know for you, Booker to Houston is where you have kind of been talking about for a while. And who's the team I guess you would say for KD would make the most sense?
Would I be cheating if I said Houston again?
No, I mean, look, if Houston wanted to make some grand gesture, if they could get Booker and KD, I mean, why not? I don't know what the package would look like going back, but it'd obviously be pick centered because the Suns don't have any picks. If you're going to rebuild, picks are your greatest asset.
Yeah, another fun place I think, you know, I think a reunion might actually work out best for Kevin Durant. Obviously, I'm talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think OKC can match salaries, and then they can also give, you know, Phoenix a treasure trove of picks.
Mm-hmm.
And they can, you know, I think the thing with OKC, and I think this is what makes them kind of dangerous to acquire him, is they can afford to overpay, right? If the market says, well, you know, Kevin Durant's worth 3 first-round picks, OKC has so many first that they can be like, yeah, here's 4. Here's 5. Even, you know, yeah, here's 5.
Mm-hmm.
And another team that could do that would be kind of fun. If I'm San Antonio, why not give them a call? We've been talking about how they need to upgrade from Jeremy Shohan at the 4. You know, I think that at the end of the day, I think those are two young teams. And to me, the key is, if I'm Kevin Durant, I want to go to a team that's as on the up and coming, right? You don't want to trade to another superstar-laden team where then they're just not going to have assets to build around you. I would be looking at OKC. I'd be looking at Houston. I'd be looking at San Antonio. Teams like that, because at the end of the day, they're on the come-up, and they have the assets to continue to build around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think the interesting part of this is the Beal part. Because especially with the no trade, like, what's a team that you could convince them to waive the no trade for? And then that team obviously wanting Bradley Beal. Because I'm looking at their structure right now. Beal at 31. Beal technically only has next year on his deal. Then he has the player option, which at this point, he'd be crazy not to pick that up for the money that's worth. So it's basically 2 years of him left. Booker's 3 more years. Durant, next year's his final year. So I think moving Durant would be easy because you're only locked into 1 year from him as the team bringing him on. I think Booker at 28, if you told a team you get 3 more years of him, I think he's still young enough that people wouldn't care. But that Bradley Beal is going to be interesting to see what they can actually do with him. Because I don't even know what team you could dump him to that he'd waive his no trade for. That's going to be the tricky part.
The only team that would take him are bad teams, but he's not going to waive the no trade clause to go to like the Hornets. So I think the most realistic outcome is you're just stuck with 2 more years of Bradley Beal. Because let's be real, if they could find a way to dump him, Bradley Beal would probably be, you know, in Charlotte right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think that if they could have, they would have used that Beal contract in a 3-team deal to acquire Jimmy Butler at the deadline.
Yeah.
But they couldn't find a 3rd team for Beal because Miami already said, I don't want him.
Right.
So, yeah, that Beal contract is what holds me up from thinking that the Suns could actually, like, do a fun rebuild because it's clear that it's no value. It's just a sunk cost, and
Mhm.
you're gonna have to give up assets to dump it. So unless
Yeah.
you're ready to part with the first, I don't see that contract moving.
Right. Yeah, such a tricky situation. I mean, look, if they move KD, they move Booker, you have a team that doesn't have a lot of expectations. Maybe you get Washington Wizard Bradley Beal where you don't win a lot, but at least he puts up some numbers for you. And you kind of deal with that for a year or two, and you can then truly do the rebuild after that. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how creative the Suns get because obviously, with people calling them the most embarrassing franchise right now, and kind of this failed experiment, like they need to be active in this off season. And maybe Booker's the first one to go, and then KD goes after because we know KD wouldn't stay there with Beal. So, and KD's already butt hurt over being put in that trade for Jimmy Butler, I believe. So he's already wanting out. I don't know. We'll see what Phoenix can kind of figure out.
I'm just imagining if Devin Booker does get traded to Houston, I think the Suns would become the most hilarious backcourt in the league
Mm-hmm.
because Jalen Green's coming back.
Yeah.
And a backcourt of Bradley Beal and Jalen Green just sounds like the most hilarious backcourt. It's just going to be straight, like, 48 minutes of tough contested jumpers. Like, for everybody else, it'll be funny to watch, but for Suns fans, that would be brutal to watch for them.
Yeah. And, I mean, even with that, like, if you're Phoenix, are you just looking for, like, Jalen Green and a bunch of picks? Would you try to get another young player out of there? And if so, like, who? Like, who do you think would be – I guess what do you think Phoenix's course of action would be in dealing with Houston? Like, Green and picks good enough? Or would you want them to target maybe another player on that team?
I would target another player. I don't think Jalen Green's a franchise guy is the thing.
Right.
Like, so I'm definitely targeting a couple young players and then as many picks as I can get. But mainly I'm targeting my own picks back.
Yeah.
But I don't think, Jalen Green's going to be a franchise player. So, yeah, if I'm them, I'll be like, Green, maybe try to, snag one of, Eason, Whitmore, or, somebody like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go from there.
Cam Whitmore is kind of interesting because I guess for whatever reason, a lot of the hype that was around him, summer league and everything like that, and even coming out of the draft, hasn't really worked in Houston for him. So I think if you're Phoenix and you could get him, I feel like that'd be a good little takeaway for you. So yeah, I think that was a good name to bring up there.
Yeah.
Like I said, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I feel like he's the perfect throw-in, like, because you can still sell the team that he has a lot of potential, and he just doesn't play for Houston. And I don't think it really has anything to do with Cam Whitmore. That's just a team that's kind of loaded at the guard and wing position, so there's just not room for him.
Good, that's fair. Like I said, keeping up with this team building that we're gotten into. I kind of want to go back to the Celtics because I think I've seen First Take. I've seen a few other shows really talking about the Celtics going forward. Obviously, you can't continue to pay as much as they do because of second apron and all of that. Because I think some people are still holding out that the Tatum and Brown get split up. I think that's not going to happen. But when I look at the team makeup, I feel like if they're going to move on from anybody, Porzingis would make sense. Next year is the last year on his deal. So he'd be technically an expiring contract. I think that'd be easy to move somewhere. I think Holiday's a guy that they could move if they wanted to. Because he'd have 2 more years and then a player option. He's 34, so 3 more years of him. He doesn't look like a guy who's going to age terribly in the NBA. And I think Holiday's the type of guy that, if the Celtics wanted to call like a Memphis or, one of these young teams that really needs a vet, I feel like Holiday's option there. So I think the question is, if the Celtics really wanted to cut salary, is that not the most sensible way to do it and kind of stop with the whole Tatum Brown split up rumor?
If you're expecting Tatum and Brown to get split up, you're going to be disappointed. It's not going to be them.
Yeah.
The only way that Jaylen Brown, for example, because I think if they did split him up, it'd be Brown, right? But I think the only way that happens if it's like a surefire upgrade. So at a position of need. So let's say theoretically, if Giannis does become available, okay, now Jaylen Brown's on the table.
Right.
But if it's not for a surefire like superstar, then you're not moving Jaylen Brown. I think if you're looking to move a player, it's just Drew Holiday's the one that really makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good for you. Like at the end of the day, couldn't have won the title without him. But at the same time, if you do want to avoid these taxes, one, the guard depth on Boston is just pretty great. Behind him, you have Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser stepped up. And I think on the flip side, your big man depth is a little more uncertain, right? Porzingis last year of his deal, but you'll probably look to extend him because guess what? I hate to say it, but Al Horford can't play forever. He's 38. I'm sure he'll look to retire at some point within the next year or two. So, and once you get behind that, like I think that guys like Luke Cornett are like fine rotational bigs, but they're not somebody you want playing like heavy playoff minutes. So, I think that if you're looking for somebody to move, then yeah, the right answer is just Drew Holiday when we start looking at the team's depth and just build.
Yeah, because like I said, I know a lot of people are looking at the Celtics' future as to what they're going to do, and I agree. I think Holiday would be the first option, and Porzingis, if you could extend him, maybe at a smaller number, then yeah, I think it's going to come down to one of those two. I think if they moved one of them, I believe they fall under the apron, so they kind of reset things a little bit. If they move both, obviously you'd feel even better about your books, but. Yeah, I think one would go. And yeah, look, Al Horford has lasted a long time. And if you look at him, like he still moves his feet on defense, he can still shoot it. Like Al Horford's at the point where if he wants to come back next year, I don't think the Celtics are going to tell him no. Like he's just that locked in with the franchise and the fan base. Like the fan base loves him as well. He went so far from average Al to now he's just like just Al. He's just that guy. So
he went from getting DMPs because he's old to becoming arguably the most. He's got to be like arguably the most loved guy in Boston. Obviously outside of Tatum and Brown. Like once we get outside of those two, it's probably Big Al. And honestly, I'm not totally tuned in with the Celtics fan base, but at this point, they might just like Big Al more than those two.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like, obviously, outside, Tatum and Brown, like obviously the biggest focal point, but from the other guys, it's like him, Pritchard's up there, Derek White. That's probably like the top three. And I do think Horford's probably at the front of that list. Like, there's nothing to hate about Al. And even the ones who might have been on the fence about him, it might have been that Bucks series when Giannis dunked on him, and then he came back and dunked on Giannis. That probably did it for the small portion that still wasn't all in on Al. But yeah, so appreciate kind of this part of the show with Anthony throwing out the Suns and everything. I guess there's another team you guys want to throw out there. We could definitely do that before we get out of here. I mean, Anthony did put this Embiid to the Pistons.
Embiid, yeah. I mean, Jory's spot on with Al Horford assessment. Embiid to the Pistons would be Embiid to the Pistons would be terrible.
Yeah, I don't see why the Pistons would want to do this.
Obviously, Embiid, he's a talent, but I'm going to relate that to Kyle. You remember back in the day when the Phoenix Suns got Shaq?
Yep.
And they were this really fast-paced team, but getting Shaq just kind of screwed them over because they had to completely slow down their offense to accommodate him. This, to me, would feel like if the Pistons getting Embiid, This would be like to me looking at the headlines going, hey, look, the Suns got Shaq. Like,
Yeah.
I just think there's so much of it like a stylistic overlap that it just wouldn't work unless you want Embiid just being like this high volume 3-point shooter, which I don't think you want because that's
Yeah.
not his strength. But in order to play to his strength, you just have to slow the game down and play it in the half court, which isn't something that the Pistons really thrive at. So I like, and I hope Embiid comes back healthy. And if they look to trade him, I think there are plenty of teams that would take him. But I think the Pistons should, don't answer the phone on that one.
Right. Yeah. I think, look, we talked about the Phoenix. I think Philly's going to be another team this offseason that will be interesting to watch because I've been pulling up their contracts right now. You have Embiid for 3 more years, and then the 4th year is a player option. You figure he probably takes that. At that point, you're taking to 35-year-old Embiid. I don't know what he's going to look like at 35 because there's already so many questions about him at 31. Paul George is 35, and you have him for 2 more years with a 3rd year that's a player option. Maxey 24, obviously, he has 4 more years. You're set there with him. Now, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond both have player options. I mean, Drummond, maybe. I don't know what Drummond's market looks like out there. But Oubre seems like a guy that might get offers from teams. So I don't think there's a guarantee he signs a player option to stay in Philly. Or, if they would offer him an extension or something like that. But yeah, outside of that, it's not really a bright future necessarily. Like Quentin Grimes has a team option. Had a team option this year. He's a free agent. I think Quentin Grimes is going to make some real money out there. You could probably count him gone. Jared McCain is the rookie. Hopefully he comes back healthy because he at least was something to be excited about early on this season before he got hurt. Yabusele, Kyle Lowry, file them papers. I don't want to see Kyle Lowry on the team next year. Like he better not be on a team somewhere. But that's kind of where the Sixers are right now. And yeah, I don't know necessarily their way outside of moving Paul George, but what does a 35-year-old Paul George get you right now in today's NBA?
Hung up on?
Exactly. So it almost seems like they're going to be like Phoenix and maybe stuck with guys they don't necessarily want around. And that's kind of crazy. Because Embiid's already cleaned out the knee again. So now you're going into next year, fingers crossed that he can make it through. And who knows what that looks like. And they're where Boston's not going anywhere. Knicks seem to be getting better. I don't know what the Raptors are doing, and I don't know what the Nets are doing. But the Nets are a team that, if they have a good offseason, they could kind of fix some things that's been going wrong for them the past couple of years. I guess what would be your easy answer to fix the Sixers?
They pretty much have. There is no easy answer. Their answer is pretty much just pray. Pray that you get blessed with a top 6 pick in this draft so you can keep your first rounder. That's the first step. Like, their future just looks beyond awful if they do not get that top 6 pick. But if they get another lottery pick, get the actual lottery pick to pair with Maxey, that would be a big boost. But again, they're just kind of on this timeline of pray and hope for the best. Because once again, what are we're talking about, Paul George and Embiid. They got money tied into them for the next 2 to 3 years. Big salary. So it's not like I can go, I just call somebody up. Well, we can move Paul George. You're not moving Paul George. You're not moving Embiid. So it just feels like they just got to hope that Embiid comes back from this and can be, even 90% of the players that he was before the injuries. Pray that Paul George can even be like 90% of Clippers Paul George, and that their draft pick just hits the ground running. But with them, there's no easy answer. It's just pray for the best.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, as a Celtics fan, I mean, I'm not one of those who's like, I want the Sixers to be horrible. I do like the Sixers and the Knicks being relevant because it just makes those matches with the Celtics that much better. We've seen previous years, Celtics Sixers games. Celtics have won basically all of them, but they're still exciting to watch. And the Knicks obviously have become more exciting when the Celtics face them in recent years. So, yeah, I think this NBA offseason is going to be very interesting. Like I said, the Suns, Sixers, because we know there'll be rumors out there about Embiid, but I kind of agree with you. I think ultimately Embiid just stays in Philly. Whether that's good to hear for Sixers fans or not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, is there another team that I feel like could be interesting with this offseason in terms of movement and or a team that we should be watching out for as potential big time players in this offseason?
I think at this point, like your interesting teams are just kind of the young ones already touched on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, like I think interesting is San Antonio Spurs. They're getting
Yeah.
Wemby back. They're gonna be getting Fox back. They have a new coach, but also not to mention not only that their lottery pick, they
Mm-hmm.
have the Atlanta Hawks lottery pick. The Houston Rockets have the Suns pick. The Thunder get that 76ers pick if it falls to 7 or lower.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like the teams that are interesting to me are the ones we kind of touched on, right? Because I feel like there's some teams with the right, lottery odds, especially if you're the if you're the Spurs and you get
Mm-hmm.
insanely lucky with like 2 high lottery picks, like this could be an off season where we kind of see the birth of like maybe a new dynasty in San
Okay.
Antonio. If you're
Yeah.
like if the Rockets are interesting just because of that. I think the Rockets are also just interesting because I think with the way they went out, like they know like their talent level right now just isn't good enough. So the key will be to find the right moves that improve the roster without overreacting. Like don't go overpaying for Kevin Durant for 1 year if he doesn't want to be there. Don't overpay. So I'll be looking forward to seeing how the Rockets retool.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, the draft lottery is the 12th. So we will actually know the draft lottery when we're back on next week. So
Ooh.
that would definitely be something to talk about for next week. And obviously, you all will have to tune in for that. I think we'll end on this. We saw Popovich retire from coaching. He's moving upstairs with the Spurs. I guess quickly, how would you, talk about Popovich as the coach, his tenure?
Greatest of all time. Like, is there any other way to talk about Greg Popovich's tenure
Yeah.
as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs? When we talk about the greatest coaches of all time, obviously we're talking there's Pop, Phil Jackson. Like, he's in a rarefied air where you can legitimately argue that this man we got to witness the greatest coaching career of all time. This is a guy who didn't have a losing season for like 20 years, and they had like a 22-year long playoff streak. Like
Mm-hmm.
the establish that level of success for that long of time is just it's unheard of. Everybody goes through lulls.
Mm-hmm.
At least you're supposed to. You're supposed to go maybe a couple of years missing the playoffs or have a couple down years. That just didn't happen with Pop. Like every year they seemingly in the playoffs. They were at least competing.
Mm-hmm.
And for the better part of his tenure, they were competing for titles. So
Yeah.
he led them to a sustained period of success that franchises dream of. So to me, when I think of Greg Popovich's tenure as the coach of the Spurs, all I think of it's gotta be a GOAT candidate. He's on the short list of greatest coaches of all time, and rightfully so. He had a hell of a career.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just looking at the press conference, like we saw former players like Duncan and Ginobili there. DeJounte Murray was there. Like you just saw the impact he had on those guys, and him taking off his jumper to show like El Jefe and all this kind of stuff. Like I just think that his impact is just way more than necessarily just on the court, because you can tell that he has created relationships with players and all that will last well beyond these days where he was just coaching. And I think Kawhi spoke well about him. I think it was after Game 7 with talking about Popovich as well. So, shout out to him. Great coach, and I'm sure he'll have just as much of an impact in their front office. And they did name Mitch Johnson as his successor. I mean, he's obviously had some experience this season coaching, so I feel like they're probably in good hands, and Pop wouldn't leave them in bad hands anyway. So, yeah.
And I will say this, because I know people are going to do this. Don't kind of screw over Mitch Johnson. And what I mean by that is, obviously, when you're replacing someone like Popovich, those are massive shoes to fill. You can't expect somebody to be able to fill them right away. That's going to take years to find, somebody who can even do a quarter of what Popovich did for that franchise. So I do want to throw this out there. Give Mitch time, be patient. Don't, like, after the first loss, like, oh, well, we need Pop back. Like, trust the process. At the end of the day, Greg Popovich has been great at training coaches. And if he picked Mitch, then I believe in Mitch. Like, I trust in Greg Popovich and the Spurs' judgment on this one, but it might take time to really, show their vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's what makes it so tough. Following a legend is that the expectations are usually kind of crazy. Doesn't necessarily help Mitch in this case, where Wemby is like skyrocketing to the moon with his stardom as well, and I think there's gonna be big expectations for the Spurs next season. But yeah, he ultimately will probably be fine at the job. There's gonna be some ups and downs with it, but you just let him kind of grow through it. But definitely wanted to talk about Pop before we got out of here. So appreciate all of you that did tune in. Brett, you can let him know what you got coming up next. Yeah, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, just thank you all for tuning in. Definitely appreciate the support. You can catch me in about 15 minutes on the Meaty Boys podcast, where we talk all things wrestling. And we got some good basketball with the NBA playoffs and WNBA starting up.
Yeah,
we got a great game right now going on between the Sky and Lynx, and overall, just I hope you have a great day. And if you're a fan of basketball, it's a great time to be a basketball fan.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so like Brett said, do appreciate everybody that tuned in. If you were new, appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully you hit the follow button or subscribe, depending on the platform. Gave us a like. Greatly appreciate that. You'll catch me back here on the network on Friday for Passion and Precision. And, here we go. Waits to the very last moment to drop in. What's going on, Cottrell? Yeah, okay.
Ooh.
We'll have to watch it. I mean, look, I already know your team's playing. It's all good. We did talk earlier about them. Neither of us were panicked about what happened in game 1. We fully expect your Cavs to come out on top. So don't worry, when you watch it back, you won't see any hating or anything like that. But yeah, so I'll be back on here Friday, Passion and Precision, with Jory, and we will be talking about obviously playoffs as well as, I guess, any big NFL news if it does come up. But we'll definitely talk Tucker and the Shador lawsuit on there as well. So come back a little bit, Meaty Boys with Brett. Get your wrestling fix and enjoy the rest of your night. We will see you all next week. All right. Bye.